Let's talk about what I've been talking about, what people are talking about now. Here we go. Separation all over the news today. First of all, obviously here in Quebec, Paul Saint-Pierre, I almost said Melançon. Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, his hair's on fire over what Doug Ford said. Last week it was over what Mark Carney said, all to do, of course, with Quebec. For those who did not hear, this is Doug Ford yesterday when in the midst of a press conference, which was not about this, by the way, but the question was asked about Quebec separation now that the PQ seem to be leading in the polls, and he said this.
It'd be a disaster for our country if the separatists got elected. It's as simple as that. We have to be a united Canada right now. There's never been a more important time in our history to make sure that we stand shoulder to shoulder, united. And not only it'll be good for Canada, it will be good for Quebecers. So folks, remember that. You want to thrive, you want to prosper, you'll prosper a lot more as a united Canada.
Okay. Not a problem. I don't think we listened to that, but of course, he did mention Quebec. He's the Premier of Ontario. That's enough to set off every separatist here. This is what Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon said.
I'm convinced that Doug Ford said that because he loves Quebec and because he wants to prioritize Quebec's interest above all. I'm sure that's the reason why he said that. So I'm very touched.
Oh, I keep saying he's touched all right. And then he followed that up with something else, which, I guess he's asking this as a rhetorical question, but if he's not, I think people will be yelling at their radio right about now.
Are people really in Quebec thinking it's going to be a catastrophe and a disaster and we need to fear the Parti Québécois?
Yes.
It's because we've been over this so many times in our recent history, but we've seen that over and over again. And
that's
people
why.
are kind of... It's kind of funny to a certain extent.
No, it's not funny at all. Not PHU funny, not FUNN funny. So first of all, give me your reaction to that. First of all, because I asked the question of our audience earlier on, did Doug Ford make a mistake by sticking his nose into this?
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely not. I mean, if you're Canadian, you totally have the right to step up and defend your country. And if you feel like Quebec's separation or sovereignty would be harmful to your country, which I believe it would be, especially in the current circumstances, I totally agree with Doug Ford at the moment. It's of all the times in our history, in our recent history, where it would have been maybe the right time to do sovereignty, this one is not. Because we are facing threats, direct threats, not only to our economy, but to our sovereignty from our closest neighbor. Just 45 minutes. The border is just 45 minutes from the island of Montreal, Aaron. So do we really want to take the risk of going our own way, our own separate way, isolating Quebec on the world stage, not being recognized as a country by the majority of the rest of the world for quite a while? And not having those alliances we are benefiting from, like NATO, for instance, to defend our country. Because the sovereignists are always painting or drawing a portrait of a sovereign Quebec where everything would be so perfect, so much better than it currently is. And they are pretending that all the countries in the world will be unrolling the red carpet to and will be in a rush to recognize us and to build alliances with us. But I'm sorry, but that's not how it works. And there's going to be a chess game played with also the fact that if you recognize Quebec as a sovereign country, if you make alliances with Quebec, it's gonna have an effect also on your relationship with the rest of Canada. So the sovereignists have really pink glasses at the moment when they think that the situation, a sovereign Quebec would be in a better situation to face the U.S. under the Trump administration. I believe personally that we are better off to remain within Canada. I totally agree with Doug Ford, and that we need to unite at the moment to face those crises that are that are coming from south of the border. And most of all, I would love Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon to come up with a more uniting rhetoric, a more positive message about sovereignty. It's not because you're Canadian.
What would that message possibly be? I'll tell you what it is, because here's the article, which says the PQ would make Quebec, quote, a rich country. After he introduces a new currency sometime after we ditch the Canadian
Everybody's
dollar.
going to be a billionaire.
Yeah.
Everybody's
going
to be absolutely. Everything's beautiful under the sun in a sovereign Quebec. I mean, nobody buys that, first of all, and the polls show that only 35%, only a third of Quebecers would be voting yes if a referendum were held today. Even more so, if you look at just the recent Palace Data poll just last week, 28%, so more than 1 in 4 PQ voters themselves would not want to have a third referendum. So there's no appetite for that right now. He's preaching in the desert, basically, and I would love Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon to stop calling anyone who's for Canada that they are against Quebec. If you can be in favor of Canada, of a united Canada, and still be a Quebecer, or you can be a great Canadian and defend your country if you're the Premier of Ontario, and not necessarily be against the interest of Quebec. I mean, Doug Ford probably sees Quebec within Canada in a better place than a sovereign Quebec, of course, and that he has the right to his opinion, and he's not necessarily working against the interest of Quebec by saying so.
So after Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon reacted that way, right? Doug Ford was asked today about what he had said and the fact that Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon did that, and he said this.
I can tell you, Quebec is stronger in Canada, and Canada is stronger with Quebec. I love Quebecers. I don't know. There's some connection with myself and Quebecers. I got to start learning French, by the way, but I just connect with them. Every time I meet people from Quebec, we connect.
So apparently Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon was right. Doug Ford does love Quebec. He just said, I love Quebecers.
I don't see anything that would make me doubt of it, because it's not because you say a sovereign Quebec would be a catastrophe for your country, Canada, which is the fact for, of course, Doug Ford. He's certainly not a sovereignist, neither an Ontario sovereignist, certainly not. I understand his point. I totally understand his perspective. I share it at the moment. I've always said, Aaron, I'm a nationalist myself. I've always said that a sovereign Quebec could be viable. It could work. There would be hiccups, of course. There would be a 5-10 years of ups and downs for sure, especially for our economy. But right now, most of all, is the worst time possible in our recent history to think about that.
But you know what the answer would be? First of all, I didn't know that about you, so it's interesting that you say that.
I'm not saying I would vote yes.
No, but you're saying that, at the right time, you'd say it could work for Quebec.
It could work.
Okay. But then again, if now's not the time, I imagine Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon's answer would be now. If not now, when?
Well, let's first of all wait for Donald Trump to be out of office and stop at least threatening our sovereignty and having eyes and an imperialist eye on the territory of his neighbors. Of course, that would be already a better time. Let's see who replaces him in office, if ever he leaves, because we're still not sure. Yeah. He might try and run for another term.
There's a lot of ifs in there, right?
A lot of ifs at the moment. So to me, to promise to commit to having a third referendum in the first term of a PQ government, which could be elected this year, is, to me, it's suicidal. And it's suicidal for the PQ, it's suicidal for the sovereignist movement, because they won't win it. And they could really shoot themselves in the foot, because I don't think they're going to win an election, a general election, with that kind of promise, because people do not want to have a referendum. The majority of Quebecers don't see the point in it at the moment. A majority of Quebecers are more worried about, am I going to be able to pay rent and pay my groceries to feed my family at the end of the day? And right now is certainly not the time. It's not a priority for the vast majority of people in this province.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Again, I wanted to follow up and say, when did you think this would be a good time for sovereignty?
Well, if we see...
No, I don't mean going forward. In the past, when did you think we could have done this?
I think in 1995, I was not 18 yet, but I think in 1995, with the circumstances, Bill Clinton was in office. We had a Jacques Chirac, who was the president of France, who was a close ally to the sovereignists at the time. He was ready to recognize the sovereign Quebec. We might not like the man, but we had Jacques Parizeau, and he had a strong team with his finance minister, Campeau, who had a solid plan to make sure that Quebec's economy would survive the first months following a winning referendum. I think in 1995, in the circumstances of 1995, following the failure of the Meech Lake Accord, that would have been a good time to do it.
Wow, you really bought in, didn't you?
Well, I mean...
Raphaël Melançon joining us every Thursday afternoon. Thank you for coming in, pal. It's good to see you.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Bryan Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
Or the free iHeartRadio app.